Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of A Game of Two Halves, where today we'll be discussing another weekend's Premier League action and quickly dipping into the Championship, while our panelists each give us their performance of the week. We're joined again by Matty, who's become somewhat of a regular on the podcast, while Mackie makes his second appearance, and we have a debutant in Tom today. So welcome Tom to the podcast. So without further ado, we're going to get going by looking at Liverpool. Another defeat for the Reds this weekend, and the season is quickly coming to a halt. Mackie, you're the Liverpool fan here. What's your thoughts on the game from the weekend?
Well, it is such a tricky one from the weekend because for 75 minutes of the game, Liverpool were in control. They controlled the tempo, they had the ball, they were creating chances, and then in the blink of an eye, a free kick given away on the edge of the box. I personally think that the lines were drawn in the wrong place, but I can't complain too much, and that's 1-1. All of a sudden, an absolute just calamity at the back with Kabak and Allison. It's 2-1 in the blink of an eye, and then the worrying thing for me is we're 2-1 down, and we didn't even look like we were going to push to try and equalise. It was like, how do we stop Leicester from scoring again? And then they did score again, and we still didn't push. And then they almost scored a fourth. So I really don't know where I'm at with this Liverpool side. I'm fed up, to be honest with you. I keep saying we'll try and do better, and you believe it to a certain extent because obviously no one makes mistakes on purpose. And I'll back the side. I'll back them till the cows come home. But something needs to change quickly. Obviously, it's a tough week for Jurgen as well, and everyone obviously here at this podcast sends our condolences. So hopefully he's doing well on a personal level, and I just hope he's all right personally.
And one player who's particularly come in for a bit of criticism over the weekend, Trent Alexander-Arnold. I know over the last season or so he's probably been the best right back in the Premier League. But this season, I've seen a stat where he's actually single-handedly given away the most possession in 3 games. So he lost possession 45 times at the weekend against Leicester. Second was 39 against Burnley, and third was 38 against Southampton. Matty, what's got into Trent this season? Is he just suffering because Van Dijk isn't there at the side of him to talk him through the game, or is he simply just becoming a bit exposed?
I think you're right. It could be either, couldn't it? But for me, I've never thought Trent Alexander-Arnold is England's best right back. I just don't think he's good enough defensively. Like every time we're Burnley fans, aren't we, Christopher? And every time we play Liverpool, Dwight McNeil seems to give him a hard 90 minutes. But for me, he's not a bad player, is he? Obviously, his record speaks for himself. But I just think he's having a bit of a tough season, isn't he? And I think it's quite clear to see why he's come in for so much criticism. But it's a tough one to call. But for me, I genuinely don't think he's England's best right back. I think if you're looking for England's best right back, I think you're looking at Chelsea and Reece James.
Go on, Mackie. As a Liverpool fan, what does Trent mean to you?
Well, he's the scouser in the team for the start, and I have to disagree with Matty. I think he is the best right back in probably world football. He's having a tough time at the minute. It's clear, but you read them stats out. Balls given away, but it is his game to try a pass, and sometimes it won't always come off. I think people can read too much into that stat. It's his natural game to try and whip a cross in. If you whip a cross in, a lot of the time it's going to get headed away. So I don't read too much into them stats. For me, he is the best right back in the Premier League, if not the world. And he did try and create stuff against Leicester. I don't like the criticism he gets because I think he is a quality right back. Like I said, Scouser in the team. He means a lot to the Liverpool fans. This is his club. He loves playing for the club. He'd give everything for the club. So. I don't like seeing him get criticism. He's one of my favourite players in that side.
Go on, Tom. Then, complete neutral. Yourself, you're a Leeds fan. Alexander-Arnold, what's got into him this season? Is it simply Van Dijk, or would you agree with Matty where you think he's perhaps not as good as he's been made to look in the last season and a half?
I think there's a few contributing factors, to be honest. I mean, first and foremost, I think it's too easily forgotten that he had a long spell on the sidelines just before Christmas, and obviously at the top level, it's so hard to slot back in after you've been out for a long period of time, and because of Liverpool's injury list and the fact that they didn't have much in the way of alternative options, Alexander-Arnold was very much just chucked straight back in after his injury problems. And that is difficult, especially in the Premier League, and when they've got, obviously because of COVID, there's such a packed fixture schedule this season, and he had to come straight back in and play a lot of games, and that's not easy. It takes a toll on your body, and I think at the moment we're seeing a Trent Alexander-Arnold that he ain't performing to the best of his abilities, but he you don't become a bad player overnight. Since he burst on the scene, he's proven that he's got an absolute abundance of ability. He's definitely one of the best right backs in the world. I would still argue he's England's best option in that position when he's on form. I mean, on current form, if England are playing next week, he doesn't start right back for me. I think long term, he's still the best option we've got. And I mean, it's a case of his form will come back. I think Liverpool are suffering at the moment from a couple of players who are world-class performers but just aren't at the best at the moment. And obviously you've mentioned that Virgil van Dijk's absence can't help him, but I don't even think it's just Van Dijk, to be honest. I mean, around him, whether it's in midfield or defence, Trent has seen so much change, and players won't perform to their best unless they're in a settled side most of the time. And Trent hasn't played in a settled side for a long time now. There's been so much interchanging and in the Liverpool side because of a variety of reasons. We've seen really inexperienced players come in. We've seen players playing out of position. And like, for example, if you've got a player playing out of position, it's not just difficult for them, it's difficult for the players around them, because Trent has grown accustomed to playing with certain players in certain positions. And for that all to change constantly on a regular basis can't be easy for Trent. And I mean, I think Liverpool have got a couple of players that have come in for stick that haven't been up to standard in recent weeks, but I've no doubt, and I would be confident as a Liverpool fan that eventually things will turn around, because form's temporary, class is permanent, and Liverpool have a lot of world-class players, and I'm sure we'll see their players back to their best very soon.
Yeah, you mentioned the players around Trent, and that's a good point you make there, actually, because he's become so used to having that shield of Henderson or Fabinho in front of the back four, taking some of the pressure off. And the man who's replaced Henderson while he's been filling in at centre-half, and the same for Fabinho, is Thiago. And Thiago's not really lived up to the heights that we expected of him when he came in from Bayern. And another player who Tony Cascarino said himself, he mentions the weekend on TalkSport about teams potentially targeting Trent Alexander-Arnold, but also Alisson. So I'll come to you on this one, Matty. Alisson's made a lot of mistakes lately, and obviously when you make them as a goalkeeper, they're certainly highlighted more than anywhere else on the pitch. But Alisson, for you, what's really got into him lately? He's just making error after error, and it's costing Liverpool badly.
Listen, I think, like you said, especially with a keeper, if you make a mistake 9 times out of 10, you're going to get punished. And I think from a neutral's point of view, without Alisson coming in to Liverpool, without Liverpool signing Alisson, if he don't win the Premier League, it's simple as that. He's been top quality, hasn't he, for Liverpool over the past couple of seasons. But I just want to say, I don't think I've ever laughed as loud as when Alisson and Kabak made that mistake for the second goal. I genuinely don't think I've ever laughed as loud, because it was I found it really funny, to be quite honest with you. But no, Alisson's a top quality keeper, isn't he? I think we're quite blessed in the Premier League in the fact that there's so many top class keepers out there. And if you were picking a number one keeper in the Premier League, I think 90% would probably say Alisson. So at the end of the day, every keeper makes mistakes, but Alisson's he's picked two poor games to make the mistakes in, hasn't he? Like the second and the third goal for Man City last week, it's just so unlike the Alisson we've seen over the past couple of years. But I think going back to what you said at the start, Christopher, if a keeper makes a mistake 9 times out of 10, it's going to get punished. So I think it's quite harsh to get on his back, but in the sense he's in the last couple of games, the 2 mistakes he's made, or the 2 or 3 mistakes he's made, that it's just so unlike the Alisson we've seen over the past couple of years, isn't it? But no, I'm sure he'll be back to his best form soon. At the end of the day, he's a top quality keeper, and like I say, Liverpool don't win that league last year without Alisson in there.
Mackie, you're a keeper yourself, and I'll come to you for this one. How does Alisson recover from this? Is he suffering because of the back four in front of him again, maybe like Trent is? the unsettlement we see so many times. I look at my own side, Burnley, for example. That solid triangle in the defence, the goalkeeper and the two centre-halves, which you had so often last season, is now gone. Is that why he's suffering potentially?
I don't think the back four can be the reason for the mistakes we've seen him make. Look, I think if you have any keeper, any top class keeper in world football, there's a time in their career where he was in a bad run of form. It's like the same for any player. It's just when it's a goalkeeper, it gets highlighted more. I think in the next game, hopefully a clean sheet that'll do him wonders. Or even if he just makes a few good saves, and you don't know how much of it was Alisson's fault against Leicester. Was there a call? I didn't hear one. There's rumours that Klopp didn't hear a call also. So if he's not called for it, then you would say it is a mistake. But if he has clearly called for it, then I think it's the defender's fault. Maybe when you say the back four, maybe if Van Dijk and Gomez or Fabinho or Matip was there, they'd know, oh, this is one that Ali will come out and get. But look, like Matty said, without Alisson, Liverpool don't win a Champions League, Liverpool don't win a Premier League, they don't win a Club World Cup. They don't win any of them things. He's been so good for him since he come in. So it's just a poor form that every world class footballer will go through in their career, and he'll be back. Just needs maybe a clean sheet, a few good saves, solid game, decide to win, get that 3 games out of the way or something. It'll all be forgotten about.
Well, moving on from Liverpool now to the side who look destined to take the crown this season, Man City. Swept aside Spurs at the weekend without any real attempt from Spurs, should I say, to win the game. Offered very little. One Bale effort that Ederson saved, and Kane hit the bar early on from a set piece. But other than that, Spurs didn't really come to win that game, I think it'd be fair to say. One player I want to pick out from the game, and someone who we're going to look at a bit more closely, Ilkay Gundogan, really come to the fore in recent weeks. I think it's 11 goals in 11 Premier League games for him now. Tom, he's someone who's almost struggled at times at City to find some momentum, but now he's finally seems to have found a position in Pep's team. He's key to their success at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, he's been absolutely tremendous, and Gundogan's a midfielder that can do a little bit of everything. He's not constricted to being an attacking midfielder and a number 10, but he's not a defensive midfielder either. He's a bit. I don't think he's always been playing like this for Manchester City, but certainly over the last 2 months, he's been really all action and closer to a typical box to box really than any other type of midfielder. And he's doing a little bit of everything, and he's just. You watch Man City and he's so integral to the way that they play. He can dictate the tempo. He gets them on the front foot really quickly. You see him dropping deep, getting the ball off the centre halves and moving them forward. You see him joining attacks really quickly and getting their flair players like the likes of Mahrez involved in the game. And he's been absolutely crucial. And I think it's a massive confidence thing with Ilkay Gundogan. Obviously, he's come over to Manchester City and he's gone in straight into a star-studded team. And I think it's difficult to stand out initially. But he's worked hard. He's been in and out of the team ever since he joined, but he's finally found his place. And unfortunately, him getting a regular place in the team has coincided with Manchester City going on a brilliant run. And it's sort of the opposite to Thiago at Liverpool in many ways, where Thiago came into the Liverpool side and they went on a terrible run, and Gundogan came into the Man City side and they went on a brilliant run. It's two opposites really, but yeah, he's been tremendous and deserves a lot of credit. And I would argue that pound for pound, there's not many midfielders in the Premier League better than him at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been integral to the success, and that's 16 wins in a row now for City, and it's hard to see anybody stopping them this season. If I said to you, Matty, City have won the league at this point, would you disagree with me? I know there's a long way to go, but surely I don't think there's anyone who can catch them at this point, or perhaps not catch them, but I don't think there's anyone who can stop them.
No, I think if you said Man City were going to win the league, I 100% agree with you. I think you look at Man United yesterday dropping points at West Brom. I'm sure we'll touch on them later, but out of the teams you're looking at actually pushing Man City in terms of a title this year, the only team that seemed to actually can get a run of results together is Leicester, and Leicester look really good, but Leicester looked really good as well last season, and then towards the end of the season, we ended up tailing off. So I think we said it last week and the week before. It's definitely Man City's to lose, and like I think I said it last week as well. It just seems like one of those runs Man City seem to go on under Pep Guardiola, where we just don't seem to lose, and there just doesn't look any team capable of beating them at the moment. And I think a lot of that definitely does come down to Ilkay Gundogan in terms of what he's providing for the team, especially with his goals. But no, in terms of the Premier League, I'd like to think it's 100% Man City's, but never say never. But like I say, in terms of people challenging Man City, there's only Leicester who seem to be able to string a few results together. Liverpool keep losing. Man United dropping points at West Brom, 19th place West Brom. Who else is there? Who else is there?
West Ham just won tonight on 42. Hard to see
Yeah,
them doing anything. And then Chelsea in
yeah.
fifth. But I think it's too much of an ask for
Yeah,
them to catch
we
City at
we
this
mentioned we mentioned West Ham last week, didn't we? Not investing in that striker, and I must admit I've just actually watched the West Ham game, and I thought Sheffield United actually played quite well. I think the scoreline was quite harsh because we actually did have chances to win it, but I think the thing is with West Ham, it will eventually come back to bite them on the backside in terms of not bringing a striker in. I think, but I might be proved wrong, but I wouldn't personally put West Ham in the title race.
So, I mean, City have got the chance this week with a game in hand against Everton, which I think is on Wednesday, to put 10 points between themselves and Manchester United and Leicester, who are tied for second place. And then United actually visit the Etihad on the 6th of March, provisionally at this moment. And I think if City were to beat United at that point, it'd be game over, wouldn't it? It just brings us nicely onto United there, actually, Matty. And again, they dropped points to West Brom this weekend. Disappointing for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He'll certainly have seen that as one of the games where he had to win. So, Mackie, for United now, is it just playing for the top four?
I think playing for the top four is probably quite harsh to say they're playing for the top four. Maybe probably playing for second place. I think is where they're looking at. I don't think anyone's can close the gap on City, especially if City win. If City beat Everton and then beat United, you might as well hand them the trophy there, because then that's it. That'll finalise it for me. But I think United will comfortably get top four. I think it's a case of finishing as high as they can, and so I think a very successful season for them will be that second place finish, because there is a few challenges. Leicester, West Ham. I don't even want to say Liverpool are challenges after the way they've been playing, but there's a few decent teams. So I think if they can finish best of the rest, then it'll be a good season for them.
Yeah, and I think that's been the Achilles heel for United this season. It's been dropping points in games where they shouldn't have, really. So you look at West Brom away, and then the one that really stands out is the Sheffield United game at home. And Sheffield United, Tom, that's someone you've seen a lot of this season. Certainly no mugs, but just to touch on them really quickly, it looks really bleak for them at the moment. 15 points adrift. I think that's a bridge too far for anyone, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think Sheffield United have been doomed for quite a while now. Obviously, over the last few weeks, they've offered their fans a little bit of hope that there might be a fight back on with some of the results that they've had. But they're just, I mean, I've seen so much of them this season, and they never get battered. They always lose by 1-goal margins. But I think that just makes it more frustrating because it shows that there is the core of a decent Premier League team there. But it's just, I think, and I've said this all season, what cost Sheffield United was their recruitment. Obviously, they had a tremendous year last year. Last summer presented a really good opportunity for them to build on the good spine of the side that they developed, add a little bit of flair, add some goals into that side and move on. And instead, they spent £24 million on a striker that has never scored a Premier League goal in Ryan Brewster, who obviously a great young talent and a player that will be good for years to come. But I think it was probably quite aspirational to think that he was going to hit the ground running in the Premier League. And I think, to be honest, spending that much money on one striker was bizarre to me, really, because it was clear that they needed to bolster their attacking options with a couple of players, not just one. And I was surprised that they didn't perhaps dip into the Championship market and look for a couple of players for slightly cheaper price tags, but who offer options out wide as well. Because, I mean, obviously they've been beaten at the time of recording. They've just lost 3-0 to West Ham. And you look at their side and there's just no flair whatsoever. You've got Billy Sharp and David McGoldrick, who, fair play to them, have been Football League strikers their entire careers pretty much, but have done okay in the Premier League, and that for their age and level of ability. But I mean, aside from that, where do the chances come from? They've got 3 central midfielders, 3 centre halves, 2 fullbacks in that side away from Sharp and McGoldrick. I don't understand where they think the service is going to come from, and I know that they play quite a unique style where the centre backs are getting forward, but they've been playing that style for a season and a half now, and teams have grown wise to it, and they understand what Sheffield United try to do, and it still does work sometimes, and it looks brilliant when it does, but you can't rely on John Egan to be your creative force for 90 minutes against Chelsea and your Man Uniteds and your Man Cities. It doesn't work like that. And it's just, it was their Achilles heel last season was the amount of goals that they score. And to be very brutal about it, you look at their forward line, and although Sharp and McGoldrick have defied the years to be okay in the Premier League, neither of them are top, like, Premier League strikers that are going to get you double figures. Neither's Ollie McBurney, neither's Ollie Burke, and at the moment, neither's Ryan Brewster. There's just no goals in that side whatsoever. And, I mean, they've got a battle in midfield. They've got some decent defenders. I'm a fan of John Egan. I think Ethan Ampadu's got bags of ability, and I think Basham's a good player as well. But there's just, going forward, they've got absolutely nothing. And the longer teams go on without scoring goals, the more pressure it puts on the defence. And it's so difficult when you've got your backs to the wall. And because every time you clear the ball, it's coming straight back at Sheffield United because there's no one up front who's making things happen. And that's really draining and difficult as a defender. And yeah, to answer your question, I do think Sheffield United are doomed. It's a shame because I like seeing Yorkshire clubs in the Premier League, but don't get me wrong, I think if they keep hold of Chris Wilder, then they've got a very good chance of coming back up. But I think it'll take a miracle for them to still be a Premier League side next season.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you make there about him signing Ryan Brewster. And you mentioned the £24 million price tag for a striker who's had really half a season in the Championship with Swansea, where he scored quite a few goals in fairness to him. And he did really well on loan in Wales, but it's just another step up to the Premier League, and it's one that he's really struggled to make so far. And when you look at the £24 million price tag and compare it to the 30 that Villa paid for Ollie Watkins, it just pales into insignificance, and it makes Watkins look an absolute bargain. The goals he scored this season for Villa have been unbelievable. But I'll come to you quickly, Matty, and then I'll come to you, Liam. What do you think on Brewster? And when I make the comparison to Watkins, is that a fair one, or am I perhaps being too critical on Brewster there?
No, I think you're being really fair. It's a very good comparison. At the end of the day, they both played in the Championship last year. Fair enough. Brewster was only there for half a season with Swansea, but to compare the two, yeah, I think it's very fair. One's taking it. Ollie Watkins is taking it like a duck to water. Ryan Brewster, the opposite, essentially. But I've just looked there now. I watched the game then as well, and Chris Wilder didn't actually bring Ryan Brewster on. And when you need a goal in a game, sure, you look to Ryan Brewster, look to the bench, and you think, you know what, Ryan Brewster might be able to change this game here. So I'm not too sure. Do I think they overpaid for Ryan Brewster? Yes. Do I think Villa overpaid for Ollie Watkins? Yes. But that's just the transfer market now, and I think Villa's definitely got the better end of the deal. And Ollie Watkins looks a fantastic player this year, and he can't stop finding the net at the minute. And yeah, Brewster, the opposite, struggling to find the net. But I think we all know as a striker, once you get one goal, the goals will start coming. But it's just a case for Ryan Brewster at the minute getting that goal. And when you're not getting time on the pitch, it's hard to get that goal. We look at Matty Vidra at Burnley. Sean Dyche sometimes brings him on with 10 minutes to go, and it's hard to actually have an impact on a game, especially in the Premier League. So is he going to find that goal? Is he going to get that goal from just being brought on with 10 to play? I'm not too sure he was. I watched him when he come on against Chelsea as well last week, and he did actually pose quite a threat, and he did almost score as well. I know it's if buts and maybes, but there is obviously a quality player in Ryan Brewster, and I think it might do Ryan Brewster a world of good, really. Sheffield United going down, so he can have that full season in the Championship, and he can prove what a top quality goal scorer he is. I'm sure. I think we all know he'd bang in goals every week if he was playing in the Championship, and that's no disrespect to Championship clubs and Championship defenders, but we all saw what an impact he had at Swansea last year. So I think it's just a case of Ryan Brewster getting that first goal. Whether that's this year, he might not get it this year. It might be next year in the Championship. It does look it looks ominous that Sheffield United are going to go down. But there's definitely a player in there. But going back to Ollie Watkins, he's having a fantastic season, and he fits Villa's style of play quite well. Actually, he's got a bit of pace. He can hold the ball. He's good with his feet, and when you've got Jack Grealish setting you up chance after chance, I'm sure Ryan Brewster would fan the net as well if Jack Grealish was setting him up with chance after chance.
Yeah, I think you're just backing up what Tom says there when you say about Grealish creating chances for Watkins, and then you've got Brewster in the Sheffield United side, who there's not really anyone there to set many chances up for him, especially now they've lost Jack O'Connell, who, despite being a centre-half, he was such a key player for them going forward, as strange as that sounds. Go on, Mackie, you've been waiting to come in for a while now. I'll let you have your say.
Just on the Ryan Brewster comparison to Watkins, I think it's quite a critical comparison based on Brewster's playing time in terms of he had half a season in the Championship and he's only a young kid, and the big price tag he's gone for, it's bound to put pressure on someone who's so young, especially from the club he's come from Liverpool, because Watkins from Brentford, you could argue, I know there was 30 million, but you could argue arguably doesn't have as much to lose as Brewster, because Brewster's got the big reputation. He's come from the champions. They value him as a decent player, so that could be the pressure weighing on him. And just another point on Sheffield I wanted to make was, obviously we know how much the FA Cup meant to a club like Wigan when they won it. And maybe if you say to a Sheffield United fan now, would you rather win the FA Cup or stay up? They'd probably say stay up. But in hindsight, the best thing that ever happened to Wigan was winning the FA Cup and going down. So all hope isn't gone for still a good season for Sheffield, still being in the FA Cup competition. So maybe they could shock everyone and go on to win that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. That'd be something I'd certainly like to hear from a Blades fan about. Would they be happy to go down with so few points, let's say, and also have a bit of cup success? Maybe not win it. Don't think that's probably realistic with the way City are playing at the minute. But if they could reach a final, perhaps they've got half a chance of getting into the semis away at Chelsea. Difficult, but on the day, who knows whether they could win the game or not. And just going back to the relegation battle quickly, Fulham yesterday had a great win away at Everton 2-0. Josh Madger bagging 2. Looks a talent, to be fair, coming from Bordeaux. Whether he can hit it off for the rest of the season, who knows? Maybe it's just that one game. We'll have to wait and see. But Fulham have got a great game coming up next. They've got Burnley away in midweek, and they know if they can win that game at Turf Moor, then they cut that gap down to 5 points. Tom, can Fulham stay up? Yeah, it's an 8-point gap at the moment, but if they beat Burnley and it's down to 5, the pressure's certainly on the teams around them. Burnley, Newcastle, Brighton. Can Fulham do it?
I think there's a chance. I was speaking to my mate about this earlier, actually. I think obviously Fulham brought in a lot of players in this summer, which is similar to what they did when they came into the Premier League last time, to be honest. And they brought some big names in when you look at the likes of Alphonse Areola and Ruben Loftus-Cheek and obviously Josh Madger, a tremendous young talent, did really well at Everton yesterday. And it's... Fulham are going to be looking at Newcastle realistically, because if they're going to catch anyone, I think it'll be Newcastle. They've obviously got Callum Wilson, their star man, out for a very long time. A lot of questions asked of Steve Bruce, and I think if any of the bottom three were going to escape, any of the current bottom three were going to escape, my money would be on it being Fulham, to be honest, because obviously I think over the last few weeks they've really started to click. I mean, when you look at the side, going forward, they've got a really exciting side. I mean, in Loftus-Cheek, Harrison Reed and Mario Lamini, you've got 3 midfielders who can really break through the lines and make things happen. And when you've got players like Ademola Lookman and Josh Maja with such pace and flair going forward, they're always going to cause team problems, even if they're not the best defensively. And I think over time, playing under Scott Parker in the Premier League and embedding the new players, they've grown to understand his philosophy, and the players that came in the summer have really started to fit in with Scott Parker's style of playing. They look a more settled side than they did at the start of the season. I mean, what's been apparent since the early stages with Fulham, and I remember watching Leeds beat Fulham 4-3 very early on in the season. I think it was back in September, and it was apparent then that Fulham had some really exciting attacking players and that they had the ability to hurt Leeds. What also was apparent was that Scott Parker hadn't quite instilled the discipline in a lot of the new signings yet. They were a little bit all over the place, a couple of breakdowns in communication, a little bit sloppy defensively, but they've really started to sort of weed out those errors now. They look a much more solid side for it.
Yeah, I think it's symptomatic with Fulham that they just seem to concede a lot of goals. I know they kept a clean sheet yesterday, but generally speaking, they're known to be quite, let's say, soft at the back, perhaps in a way, and they get bullied by sides at times, conceding quite a lot of goals. But there's never been any question that going forward they pose a threat to teams. You mentioned Lookman there. He, for me, is one of the better players in the bottom half, and the fact he never got any game time at Everton before they shipped him out, I think was criminal. I think he's going to be a great player for Fulham. Matty, they play us on Wednesday, both Burnley fans. I mean, are you slightly worried about Fulham and like whether they have a little resurgence, or do you think we'll have enough and it's Newcastle who should be worried?
Yeah, I'm 100% worried, especially with the news coming out today that Ben Mee won't be able to play against Fulham. So no doubt in my mind, it's going to be a really tough game. And I watched the Fulham game yesterday. I'm full of praise for Fulham. They really do get you off your seat. They're really exciting to watch as well. Tom's just mentioned there about the attacking players they've got going forward, the likes of Lookman, Loftus-Cheek, Josh Maja, who's just come in, which I think is a very smart signing considering the impact he had at Sunderland. I'm surprised other clubs haven't been sniffing around him. Who else have we got to our up front? But Bobby De Cordova-Reid as well. He's having a fantastic season. He's having a real impact on that Fulham side as well. One player, I put a tweet out last night after the game, and it was about Harrison Reed. I really rate Harrison Reed so highly. He's such a good player. He's just always available to have the ball. He's quite forward thinking, and he keeps the ball really well as well. I'm full of praise for Harrison Reed. I watched him yesterday, and I've watched him quite a few times this season, and he's really, really impressed me. I think he's an absolutely quality player. He really is. But going back to the game on Wednesday, it's a really tough one. It's a weird one for Burnley because me and you were talking about it the other day, Christopher. And if we lose, it's us who's more in trouble than Newcastle, realistically, isn't it? Because we've just essentially kind of slipped on a banana type thing, and it's gonna be a really tough game, and I'm interested to see which way it's going. But it looks like Kevin Long will be coming in for Burnley, and I'm really not a fan of Kevin Long, if I'm being honest with you. I just don't think he's a Premier League type player. I don't think he's good enough to play in the Premier League. But to be fair to him, whenever he comes in, he always gives 100% and he's solid. But going forward again, Burnley are probably going to be missing Matty Vidra again, and who else is the Chris Wood again? So it genuinely could go either way, but I'm quite confident in the fact that Burnley are at home, and I hope we can get 3 points. But if we did end up losing the game, it would be game on. And would I take a point? I said to you yesterday, Christopher, probably not. I wouldn't take a point because I think Burnley really do need to win this game. And it's a big week for Burnley as we've got Fulham on Wednesday, haven't we? And then we've got West Brom on Saturday. So for me, we've got to be looking at getting 6 points from those 2 games. But if Fulham was to come to the turf on Wednesday and beat us, it would be game on, not only for Newcastle but for Burnley as well, as we've just missed a big opportunity to take themselves away from Fulham even more and put that gap back to 11 and move on to 29 points. I think if we was to beat Fulham on Wednesday, that'd be game, set and match for me, I'd like to think. But no, if he was to lose, Burnley would anxiously be checking over the shoulder, especially especially with Ben Mee not playing this Wednesday. It's going to be a tough game for Burnley. I'm sure Fulham fancy the chances, but let's not forget Burnley have just come off the back of beating Crystal Palace 3-0. So, and I felt we bossed that for 90 minutes. Don't think Palace ever really threatened us that much.
Yeah, so if Fulham are doing well at the minute, Mackie, but there's still 7 points adrift of Newcastle, 8 of Burnley, and then 8 of Brighton, and then Crystal Palace are on the fringes on 29 points, where you think they should have enough to be safe. If Fulham are going to get out of it, would you agree with Tom and it'd be Newcastle are the team that are going to get dragged back in, or is it Burnley and Brighton who should be worried too? That's assuming Fulham do get out, of course.
I think if you look at the squads of Newcastle, Burnley, and Brighton, you'd say, oh, it's Burnley and Brighton that should be worried. But the way Brighton have been playing recently hasn't been too bad. They're picking up really good results. Same with Burnley. So I think just based off how the teams are currently playing, forget about the stars in Newcastle's side. I think Newcastle have a right to be worried as we're recording this. They're currently 2-0 down away at Chelsea. And I think Fulham have been playing quite well recently. Obviously, Josh Maja scoring 2 on his first start. He's a top quality striker, and if he can continue that, then I don't see why Fulham can't stay up. I think Newcastle are the team to be most worried. Definitely, for me, I think Burnley and Brighton have enough to be safe, and I think maybe not. That doesn't come from the players in the squad, but how well organised the sort of managers get the side. So for me, it's Newcastle who should be worried.
Yeah, I think everyone's in agreement on that, and Newcastle should be probably the ones who are looking over the shoulder. But I'm going to come to you this time, Tom. We're going to touch on your team. So for anyone who doesn't know, Tom's a fan of the media darling this season, Leeds United, and conceded 4 again away from home yesterday. Tom, a makeshift back four, should we say, Shackleton, Ayling, Cooper and Alioski. Certainly wouldn't be Bielsa's first choice back four, but again, 4 goals shipped on the road. Is it worrying conceding so many goals, or is it just down to how makeshift the back four is?
I mean, first of all, I'm acknowledging the media darlings comment because I regularly argue with people who call us this because, I mean, yeah, a lot of people are like, oh, we're brilliant to watch and give us loads of praise. The same people then, I mean, to be honest, I think there's been a little bit of weird treatment of Leeds this season anyway, that when we win, everyone loves us and we're a breath of fresh air to the Premier League and Bielsa's a hero. And then when we lose, it's Bielsa's a fraud, Leeds are going down and the wheels are coming off. It's a weird contrast that I find in the media this season. So you're half right in that with the media darlings one week and then the haters the next. But I mean, in terms of the defensive setup that we've currently got and the team that we're able to put out, it's difficult because, I mean, we made 4 big signings in the summer. We brought in Rafinha, we brought in Rodrigo, we brought in Koch, and we brought in Llorente. And they were our 4 big sort of expenditures. And they were supposed to be the benchmark signings, the landmark signings that were going to make a championship side Premier League quality. For the game yesterday against Arsenal, we had one of those available in Rafinha. I mean, we got promoted from the championship last season, or sort of built on the foundation of Liam Cooper and Ben White at centre-half. Obviously, we couldn't get Ben White back from Brighton, so we had to dip into the market and buy 2 new centre-halves. And to be without them this season's been really difficult. And I think a lot of people don't appreciate how big those losses are because the current setup that we've got, I think a lot of people, especially Premier League fans who didn't keep a close eye on the Championship last season, they'll look at Pascal Struijk playing on a regular basis and think, oh, well, he must have been a part of the squad for last season. Pascal Struijk barely played for us in the Championship last season. He was on the bench a lot, but he didn't actually make any starts until the back end of the season. In fact, I'm pretty sure he only made his debut for us in December against Cardiff when we drew 3-3. So he's barely played any games, and for him to be, he was the first choice centre half for our under 23s, and all of a sudden he's playing in the Premier League, and it's a big ask, and it's very difficult. And another problem, everyone talks about our back 3 or 4 or however we set up on the given day. I think one of the biggest problems we've faced is that Marcelo Bielsa's style centres completely around the Calvin Phillips role, which is quite a unique positioning where he's playing as a holding midfielder, but he's dropping into the back line regularly, finds himself at centre half on a consistent basis, and it's quite a unique role that has been sort of the bedrock of the way we play ever since Bielsa became manager. When Calvin Phillips isn't available, it's a massive problem for us because not only are we missing someone of Calvin Phillips' ability, Bielsa then, because he's quite religious in the way that he sticks to his formation and his ideas, no matter what, he's quite stubborn in that respect. He, instead of sort of shuffling the team around to accommodate for Phillips' absence, he will sort of shoehorn someone into the Calvin Phillips position. And on most occasions this season, that player has been Pascal Struijk. He by trade is a centre half, and he's been asked to play the Calvin Phillips role in the Premier League, which is just a huge ask. And I think when he has played in that position this season, and I mean, disclaimer, I'm a fan of Struijk, but I think he's made us look a little bit disjointed this season because he just can't do what Phillips can. He's not quite as comfortable with his feet, his positioning, he's not quite as disciplined in his positioning, and I think it leaves us quite exposed at the back. And I think you've seen that obviously with a makeshift back four, it's made things very, very difficult. And I think it's just a case of expectation management, really. I mean, I know things haven't been going swimmingly at Arsenal last season. We got a good draw against them last time. But you look at the Arsenal side that they put out tomorrow, and players like Saka, players like Aubameyang, these are players that we couldn't afford in a million years. And these are players that up against, I mean, a makeshift defence. I mean, every single player that's playing in our defence at the moment was a championship player last season. So it doesn't really surprise me that likes of Saka and Aubameyang are absolutely licking their lips at the prospect of coming up against us. And I mean, the goals we've conceded this season have been a little bit concerning in certain games. And the game that everyone pinpoints as the one where everyone started questioning Leeds is the 6-2 defeat to Man United before Christmas. But you can't have your cake and eat it. We play, I would argue, probably the most entertaining football in the Premier League, and I appreciate that might be seen as quite a bold shout by people who support other clubs. But I've seen a lot of Premier League teams play this season. I've not seen anyone who plays football that excites me as much as our style of play. And I think that's the price you pay. That sometimes if you play intense, attacking, direct, sort of exciting football, sometimes you're going to leave yourself a little bit exposed. But and every now and then we will take a spanking like we did off Man United. But on the other hand, we'll also really challenge teams like we have on many occasions this season. And ultimately, I think it is all about perspective. We are a side that were promoted to the Premier League along with Fulham and West Brom. Those two sides find themselves in the relegation zone, and we are comfortably clear of that on 32 points. And obviously, everyone uses 40 points as the benchmark for teams that survive. And to be honest, I mean, we're 8 points off that. And I don't think anyone, even our biggest critics, think we're going to get relegated. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's just a case of expectation management. We had a really makeshift side yesterday, really depleted in terms of injuries. Not only do we have Rodrigo, Koch and Llorente out, we've got Matthias Klick playing through an injury, and he's been completely burnt out this season anyway, having to play so much because of injuries around him. So it's a depleted squad, and I, for one, aren't going to lose any sleep over the fact that we lost 4-2 to an Arsenal side which has got world-class players. And I mean, even the second half, I think, shows that at half time, I think it would have been very easy for everyone to want Bielsa to rip up the sort of playbook and go for a completely different approach in the second half. But he didn't. He shuffled the personnel around. Very bold decision in bringing a debutant in Niall Huggins on instead of Pablo Hernandez. But it paid off. We were absolutely brilliant in the second half. I thought we were really good going forward. Obviously, ended up getting 2 goals. And it was much improved. So, I mean, there's positive signs. Although it's difficult conceding 4 goals. You don't want to ever concede goals at all, never mind that many. But I think that's basically the price we have to pay for the style of football that we see. And to be honest, I don't think I'd swap it.
Go on, Matty. I know you're quite a big fan of Leeds and the way they play.
Yeah, obviously, I think the best game of football I've watched this season is definitely the Leeds versus Man City game, the 1-1 draw, where, if we're honest, Leeds should have took all 3 points that day. But the reason I wanted to say something, I just wanted to say, we watched a lot of Wigan Athletic, didn't we, last year, Christopher? And it was nice to see Joe Gelder on the bench for Leeds. on Monday night and yesterday as well. We watched quite a bit of him last year, and he's going to be some talent. So to see him on the bench for Leeds, it was really nice, and I hope at some point this year he's given a game, because I have no doubt in my mind that he will deliver. Because I firmly believe he's going to go to the top one day, that lad. Because he is an absolutely quality player, and I know he's been bagging in goals for the 23s as well. So it's really nice to see him getting his chance on the bench, and I'm sure if he does ever get given that chance, he will take it.
Go on, Mackie. You're like Matty. You were waiting to come in for a long time. Go on.
It's just something I want to say based on all this idea of exciting football is the best way. To be honest, I totally disagree with that. For me, football's a results business. I just personally base it off the Liverpool sides I've seen. The Liverpool side probably, I think it was the 17-18 season, played some absolutely electric football at times. There was games where we'd score 5 or 6 goals, and we looked unplayable. It was quick passing, strong build up, unbelievable. But then the defence wasn't up to par, and we'd lose games heavily. And then I contrast that with the 19-20 side that won the league, where at times we played awful football. We were boring. We scraped through games 1-0, 2-1. But I know which side I'd rather have. I'd rather have that team that grinds out a 1-0, a 2-1. I'd rather have that side than the side that can win 4-2, 5-0 one week and then get beat 4-1, 4-2 in Leeds' case. So for me, it's not about exciting football. It's a results business. If you have a manager who loses too many games, but they're scoring loads of goals, for me that's not good enough. I don't mean this in terms of Leeds, because Leeds have had a very good first season in the Prem. But for me, it's not about exciting football. It's about getting the points. It's about getting over the line, and that's why I think sometimes Newcastle fans can be a bit hard on Bruce. He's done. I know he's struggling at the minute, but he's not done half a bad job with what he's been given. Sometimes you just got to accept the style of football that you play. It's built a career for managers like Bruce and Sam. So for me, it's a results business. You got to focus on the results. You look at how many points are on the board, not the football that you play.
Yeah, so going to have a look at the teams now who are vying to join Leeds in the Premier League next season, assuming that's where they'll be, as I think we can all agree they are going to stay up this season. So, I mean, Swansea didn't play this weekend. The game at Sheffield Wednesday was called off. And Brentford had the chance to retain their position at the top, and they slipped up yesterday, losing 2-0 at home to Barnsley. Norwich took full advantage on Saturday, beat Stoke 4-1 at home, and I think Norwich have got a great chance of going up this season. Meanwhile, outside the playoffs, Cardiff were the only real big winners outside. Middlesbrough, Blackburn and Stoke all lost ground on the top 6. So, Tom, I know you're into your Championship football. Can you see anyone overcoming that 6-point gap and getting into the playoffs? I mean, there's still a lot of football to be played, but no one really seems to be taking it by the scruff of the neck and dragging themselves into the top 6.
No, as it stands, to be honest, if you look at the chase impact behind the top 6 in the Championship, I can't really see. There's no teams at the moment that I see breaking into it, really. I think if you look at some of the most informed sides at the moment, so for example, I'll point to Barnsley, they're in great form, and it's usually the ones that pick up momentum that can make late bursts, but they're just too far away in terms of points. And you look at, below the top 6, you've got Cardiff, who, they've picked up results-wise under Mick McCarthy, but, I was at their game against Rotherham last week, and I didn't see anything that suggests... They were very, very lucky, to be honest. They, when the conditions started deteriorating in the last 20 minutes, Cardiff took advantage, really, and I don't think they have got... I don't know, as much as the results have improved, I don't think Cardiff have got enough in terms of the element of surprise. I think teams know what they play, and I think when they come up against the top sides, they'll get found out, because I don't think they've got too many different options and too many different plans in the way they play. So I can't see Cardiff really breaking in and overtaking Bournemouth, for example. Middlesbrough's an interesting one, because a month ago, Middlesbrough looked like they could be making their way into the playoffs under Neil Warnock, and they've done They've done a lot of investing in the January transfer window, and whilst they've been adding these players, it just seems to have disjointed them a little bit. They haven't really settled in very quickly as Neil Warnock would have liked. And again, Borough, similarly to Cardiff, are fairly one-dimensional. They've not really got much in the way of fluidity and flexibility in their style. And I think that's the biggest difference between the Cardiff and Borough, for example, and the sides above them. You look at the current teams occupying the playoff spots, and you've got Swansea, Watford, Reading, and Bournemouth. These are all sides that can play in different ways. They've got strength in depth. I think if you look below that in Cardiff and Borough, they're more one-dimensional teams and can't quite offer what the teams above them can. Blackburn and Stoke are interesting ones because I for one expected a lot from Blackburn this season. I mean, they've got Adam Armstrong, which I think is huge. I think he's a player that if he's not in the Premier League next season, I'll be very surprised. He's an unbelievable player at that level. They've got some really, really classy operators at Championship level. If you consider the likes of Lewis Holtby and Harvey Elliott, obviously on loan from Liverpool, who is just a tremendous talent. And when I've seen him in the Championship this season, he's looked a little bit of a cut above, and it's hard to see him not having a bright future at Liverpool. But they're just so inconsistent. And Blackburn one week will look like a side that can really knock on the door of the playoffs and push for promotion. The next week, they look like a side destined to fall away. So they're bizarre in that respect. And I think the same can be said for Stoke in that they've brought in a lot of good players, but it's just they're not quite consistent enough to make their way into the top six. And it's quite a boring prediction, really. But in terms of how the rest of the Championship season will play out and how I think it will play out, I can't see much changing. At the very start of the season, I tipped Norwich to win the league. My mind hasn't changed in that respect. I still think they'll take the title. I think Brentford will probably finish second. And to be honest, I mean, if any, obviously for a team to surge into the playoffs and make a claim for promotion later on, another team has to fall away. And currently, the only team I can see falling out of that top six and giving someone else a chance is Bournemouth. Obviously, they sacked their manager Jason Tindall 2-3 weeks ago now. There's a lot of uncertainty around that club now. There's been so many names linked with the managerial job, big names, little names. I mean, Frank Lampard's been linked with it, and there's so much uncertainty about that club now. And obviously, that translates over to the pitch. And I think we've seen in the last few weeks that Bournemouth don't really have much of an identity because they're in a transitional period. And I think if Bournemouth don't wrap up their managerial situation soon, then I think they'll find themselves in danger of dropping out, which shouldn't happen because on paper, Bournemouth squad is unbelievable at Championship level. They should be in the promotion picture, but they've been so inconsistent in the last few weeks. They seem to have a little bit of a soft underbelly, and I just think it's possible that they could fall away. But I think the saving grace for Bournemouth is that I don't think there's too many teams below them that are really good enough to surge into those playoff spots.
Yeah, you mentioned Blackburn there being inconsistent. That is a really interesting one. I think they've got a game in hand that could take them to 42 points and 4 behind Bournemouth, but they just don't seem to be able to find the consistency level. And another team who I find them interesting because away from home they've been great this season. I think they've actually got one of the best away records in the league. But at home they've really been struggling and they can't seem to find any consistency. And that's Preston. I think Alex Neil's done a great job at Preston with the resources he's got there to get a team who is so close to challenging for the playoffs, yet they just can't quite take that final step. And I think a lot of it comes down to finance, but I think he's done a great job. And I'll come to you, Matty, because I know you're into your Lancashire football and that, being a Burnley fan, and you keep a close eye on a lot of the other teams. But Preston, can they make that last step towards the playoffs? I know last season they had a great run and they came close, but they fell away. Preston, Blackburn, will them teams ever make that last step to compete with the top six?
I think if you were picking one out of the two, it's funny you've mentioned Preston and come to me because I was just actually about to mention Preston myself. I know they beat Blackburn 2-1, didn't they, on Friday night? And it's a strange one, Preston, because they always seem to, like you say, be in and around there for a lot of the season, and then towards the end of the season, they always seem to tail off as the Bristol City, but. It's a bit of a strange one, Preston, in the fact that in the January transfer window they had a bit of an overhaul, didn't they? I think they lost 7 players, and I think they brought 7 players in as well. So it's an interesting one because I think they've had. I know they lost. Is it Tom Davis? His name was to Liverpool, but Ben Davis rather. But I think they had a really strong January window, and in the sense they brought in Van der Berg on loan from Liverpool. They also brought in Anthony Gordon on loan from Everton. I think every season, I think, as Tom just said, there's always one who shoots in and gathers that little bit of momentum going into the playoffs at the end of the season. And I think it's important to forget we are still in February. We are still in February, and there's still a long way of the season to go. So, if I was tipping, if you was to ask me out of one of the two Lancashire teams, who do you think might make that late surge towards the playoffs? Is it either Blackburn or Preston? If I'm honest, I am putting my money on Preston, and I know, like you said, they do drop silly points at home, but I feel if we can sort that home form out, they've definitely got a strong chance of playing in the getting themselves into the playoffs and maybe even playing in the Premiership next season. So I think with Preston, I like Preston. It's a really nice club. It's a nice ground, and it really would be nice to see them in the Premier League. And even saying that as a Burnley fan as well. So Blackburn, do I want them to come up? No, do I? But I would like to see Preston get a sniff and get a chance in the Premier League, and I really hope they can do it this year. But like I say, we're going to have to sort the home form out if they are to make that late surge towards the playoffs. But away from home, I think, like you said, they've been top notch this season, and I really am interested to see, especially how Anthony Gordon gets on at Preston for the rest of the season. But I really do hope he can get that form together and hopefully make that late surge towards the playoffs, because it really would be nice to see Preston in the Premier League, as we do naturally come so close every year.
I think they've got a great chance to arrest that poor home form tomorrow night. They've got Watford at home. Good chance to put a marker down and send out a statement to the rest of the league by beating one of the playoff rivals that they could actually make that push late on. So just to round off tonight, we're going to look at performance of the week from each of the lads on tonight. Just a minute on each, and I'm going to start with you, Mackie. So who's your performance of the week this week?
For me, it has to be Aubameyang. Hat-trick against Leeds. People were saying, is he all he's hyped up to be Aubameyang? I think he proved it yesterday. He's a top quality striker. He's proved that he's world class. As we said about Leeds a good side, difficult side to beat. You have to find the net if you want to beat him, and he did that. So yeah, it's got to be Aubameyang for me. There's no one else.
Go on then, Tom. Who's yours?
To be honest, I'm going to go a little bit left field, and I'm presuming we can pick any team from any division in English football.
Yeah,
right?
team or player. Player, yeah.
So for performance of the week, I'm actually going to go with Wickham. They absolutely ruined my bet at the weekend. I had Huddersfield to beat them. They were away at Huddersfield, and they were 2-0 down after 41 minutes, but Bakuna and Benza scoring for Huddersfield. And obviously Wickham, for anyone who doesn't really follow the Championship quite closely, have been sort of the whipping boys of the division. They came up from League One quite unexpectedly when no one thought they were going to, on a shoestring budget with players that weren't even top-end League One standard, and they've come into the Championship this season and really struggled quite expectedly. I mean, they're not... I think everyone, even the most optimistic of Wickham fan, didn't think they were going to stay up. But they went away to Huddersfield this season. There's a gap of... Huddersfield sitting on 33 points, Wickham on 19, so there's a big gap between the sides. Wickham came back from 2-0 down to win 3-2. Josh Knight getting the winner in the 87th minute, and that was just a huge turnaround, required a lot of character. Really demoralising being bottom of the league anyway, and never mind being 2-0 down away at a side in poor form like Huddersfield are. So to come back from 2-0 down in that scenario, I just thought was really impressive. So yeah, Wickham Wanderers are my performers of the week.
Yeah, that's a great shout you make there, Tom. And finally, Matty, to round us off.
I think if you're honest, Christopher, I think you know who I'm going to give my performance of the week to. I'm going to give it to my team, Burnley. I thought we were fantastic on Saturday. In particular, Matthew Lowton. I don't know what's got into him this season, but he's been absolutely fantastic, and his goal was absolutely unreal, to say the least. I think if you see Trent Alexander-Arnold do that, I think all the pundits are raving about it. It hasn't really had much praise, but I felt we bossed it for 90 minutes on Saturday until Ben Mee went off. Palace never really had a sniff, and it was nice to see great performances from all the lads. Eric Peters, he's not. I'm not his biggest fan, but I think since he's come in, he's been top notch. To be fair to him, and I just hope we can take that performance on to Wednesday and hopefully give Fulham a game and beat them. But no, my performance of the week this week, I'm going to give it to the boys. I'm going to give it to Burnley because, like I say, I thought Palace never really had a sniff, and I thought we were fantastic. And in particular, Matthew Lowton, what a goal!
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I'm going to give mine to the Sheffield Cafu, Matthew Lowton. Another great performance and an even better goal to go with it. Well, that brings us to an end of another podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week to round up another weekend of Premier League and EFL action.